You're going to love Gill Hicks. 12 months ago, her life hung by the slenderest of threads. She could live or die. It was her choice. Gill was on the London Underground that day last July when the suicide bombers struck. In fact, one of the bombers was standing almost next to her when the carriage exploded. She survived, just. At that moment, death would have been easier, but somehow, as she waited for the rescuers, Gill willed herself to live. Traditionally, on anniversaries like this, we remember the dead, but perhaps now is also the time to remember and celebrate the courage of the living, people like Gill Hicks. Do you get out very often and go shopping?
As much as I can. Once a week.
Gill Hicks bubbles with life and a wicked sense of humour.
All right, twice a week, Tara. You forced it out of me.
It might seem slightly perverse, but this woman, with 2 artificial legs, is taking me window shopping for shoes. She can't wear most of them, but that doesn't stop Gill from looking.
Oh, and look at the little red shiny ones. They're quite nice.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It's okay. That was them. That was life number 1.
Gill's life number 2 started a year ago on July 7th. The day suicide bombers attacked 3 trains and a bus in London.
1 minute minding your own business, bang.
700 people were injured and 52 people, including 1 Australian, were killed. Gillian Hicks was trapped in a train on the Piccadilly line. Her injuries so horrific, she too should have died that day.
It is great to be alive, and I can't say that strongly enough. Choosing life is fantastic.
How drunk were you there?
I was very drunk, yeah.
She did lose both legs, and a lesser person may have spent the last 12 months mourning that loss.
Definitely, we should frame that one.
But in this year of living, Gill has married Joe.
Why do I look such an idiot when I've got that gormless smile on my face?
I don't know.
Her partner of 7 years.
No, you're supposed to say, no, you don't look like an idiot at all. You look wonderful and manly.
You look wonderful and manly.
Thank you, love.
Yeah, it's all right.
And together, this curator and academic intend to make the most of their second chance.
What if is just completely the wrong question, There's no good thinking about how life might have been or opportunities missed.
I think what's important also is to say that it could have been a lot worse.
Gill's originally from Adelaide, but she's lived and worked in London for the past 13 years. For her, July 7 was a hectic morning. Late for a meeting, she jumped on a train she rarely catches.
The tube was suffering horrendous delays. I thought, I can't believe it, today of all days. And I, of course, would have boarded with Jermaine Lindsay, the bomber. So did that on the wrong day.
On that morning, without a second thought, Gillian Hicks crammed into the first carriage with another 200 or so people. She now knows she was 1 person away from the bomber, so close she could have reached out and touched him. Gillian had been travelling for less than a minute, and as the train reached the deepest section of the underground, Jermaine Lindsay detonated his bomb. No one could tell Gill why she survived when 26 people around her died.
My first initial thoughts was that I was dying of a heart attack in the tube. And I could vaguely hear people screaming in a muffled sort of way, and I thought everyone was in a panic because they thought I was having a heart attack.
When you describe the feeling of having a heart attack, is that a feeling of pain?
It felt like I was in black tar or soup or like a big black liquid that you're just falling into. So something is cushioning you and it's very gentle, but that's the slowness of it.
50 seconds later, another bomb, another train, and another Australian victim working and living in the UK. How many people died in that carriage that day?
7.
How close were you to the bomber?
3.5 feet.
How did you survive?
I don't know. Extraordinary good fortune.
John Tulloch's confused and bloodied face came to symbolise the despair of that day. When you look at the photographs that were taken of you as you emerged from the underground, who do you see? Who is that person?
I didn't recognise that person. I think possibly the main feeling was how close I'd come, and that photograph perhaps represented to me how close I'd come.
This is clearly a very large incident, and it's still very far from over.
Back on Gill's train, her reaction was the very opposite of what you'd expect. In the chaos, she was calm.
I could look at this rather objectively and think, God, you know, my feet look like they've been surgically severed off, because they were just hanging by a thread, and my legs were almost completely blown away. And
in the hell of that carriage, Gill had the nous to stem the bleeding. She saved her own life by using her scarf to tourniquet her legs. She then elevated them as she waited to be rescued.
We're sitting almost in just a dark grey cloud, and it was quite eerily quiet.
I would have thought that perhaps the quiet was worse than the screaming, because...
Absolutely, yeah. And that's like a private hell for everybody that was there.
Because the quiet meant that those people had died.
That's it, yeah. And you know, they are asking for help right up to the last moment, and there was no help for them. And, you know, there's nothing any of us can do about that.
Gill's train, blown up deep underground, was the hardest to get to. She waited for over an hour, and for every minute of that time, fought with the voice inside her head telling her to go to sleep.
Just go to sleep and that'll be fine, go to sleep. And I knew that sleep meant death, and death felt quite soothing and quite a good option. But then I also had the time to think about my death wouldn't affect me, it affects the people that you leave behind, and that's who I started thinking about. And there was too much to live for. Sorry.
Gill Hicks' life was saved many times by many different people that day. When she came out of a 4-day coma, she was told she'd lost both her legs.
That's when the nursing staff said, no, they're not there. And then I asked, please, can you show me my arms? And wouldn't believe that I still had 2 arms. And once I knew I had 2 arms and they put them in front of my face, I just thought, oh, that's all right, that's good, I've got arms. And I think after that...
Why was that so important?
Because I just thought, what have I been reduced to? What am I now? And am I just a torso in a bed? How many times did the physios take me around here?
Well, and also, do you remember every time we hit...
In those early days, Joe willed Gill on, but no one could tell him if she'd make a full recovery.
I suddenly thought I could be feeding her with a spoon for the rest of her life. But that doesn't matter. It's still Gill, and I want Gill alive, and I don't care what state I get her back in. I just have to have her alive.
But less than 3 months after the attack, Gill was already making remarkable progress.
It's quite exciting, because for anyone who hasn't been able to stand up, just the standing was fantastic. So at one stage I remember thinking, you know what, if I can't walk, that's okay, because standing is great. And I could stand at the end of a bar and pretend and just have a drink, or I could just brush my teeth and look in the mirror, and the moment I could just stand up, it was just lovely.
The walking is even better, and it has to be. In typical London style, her home has 6 flights of stairs. But when you see Gill tackle them, you forget what she's been through and how recently.
This is the drastic bit. This is where you just think, my God, that person doesn't actually doesn't have any legs. It's very different than when you first meet me and I'm sitting
Up in
down
her
there.
attic bedroom, Gill describes her routine, climbing in and out of bed, getting showered and dressed without legs. Are you comfortable with how your legs look?
I am now. I mean, I actually, and I have this with the physios that we call them my twin boys, and they're not quite identical twins, but they're sort of identical, and they're boys because they're naughty and all that sort of thing. So I guess it's easier talking about them as their own beings rather than necessarily me, because I miss my legs every day, and I miss the use of them. But I also miss them, I miss sort of silly little things like painting your toenails or...
Gill's disarmingly open about something so private.
And I don't know if you want to just even feel how...
Oh, that is heavy, isn't it?
Yeah. And this is the lighter pair, yeah.
And has a knack of making the difficult look easy.
It's like balancing on stilts whilst you're wearing stilettos.
Sounds like a hard act.
And doing that at the same time.
While Gill's focus has to be on her physical recovery, John Tulloch has written about his experience. For this university professor, his book is part professional and part personal, dealing with the demons that continue to haunt everyday life.
Standing on a tube station, and round the corner came the Piccadilly line. I just shuddered seeing it, but I had to get in the train. I got in it. It was only 3 stops to Uxbridge, and I couldn't handle it. It was my second day back at work, and I was shaking, and I had to go back home. So there are those things that continue. So they're very personal. They're very physical. They get you in the gut. And the post-trauma guy said, just first of all, look at the train a lot. Don't turn away from it. Get used to it, get bored by it, and then get in it.
Are you bored by it yet?
Not yet.
The people who say they know about these things say it's not a matter of if but when. It will happen again in London.
And how sad is that? How sad is it that we accept that? Even July the 7th, that there was a sense of inevitability about it all.
Do you fear it happening again?
Yeah.
Can I do the rabbit ears now? We've always had a good laugh. Stop it.
What makes Gill Hicks remarkable is that she has no hint of bitterness or resentment for what she's lost. Of course, there are frustrating dark days, but mostly she's thrilled by a newfound strength. Gill now knows when it comes to surviving, she can count on herself.
Divorce live on television. I don't know how I knew that. I've never even done a first aid course, and I am squeamish and I'm all those things that proper girls should be, So I don't know. I don't know what happened that day to me, but I'm so proud of myself that I did it, that I was able to be calm and do what I could to keep myself alive.
I read somewhere that you said pity is not a word that you want to describe you.
No, absolutely not. Because I'm sort of almost bigger and better than I was before, even though there's less of me.